Okay, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good.
Thank you for meeting with me.
Of
Really
course.
appreciate it. Okay. So I was thinking that I would have you introduce yourself for the purposes of the recording.
Okay. I'm Amy Watson. I'm currently a first grade teacher in Oak Harbor, Washington. And I've been a teacher for over 30 years. I was a special ed teacher for 14 years, and then I taught fourth, fifth, and first.
That's awesome. Okay, so this project is about advocacy for like basically our future career, and my future career will be elementary school teacher. So my advocacy topic that I'm focusing on is parental involvement in a child's schooling and how it's directly related to higher achievement, attendance, and even student interest. And my question that we're kind of focusing around is how can educators and administrators support families and encourage them to be involved in their child's education? So I just have a few questions to ask you and we will get started. Do you have any questions before I start?
Not yet.
Okay. So as a current teacher, what's the primary method of communication that you have with families?
Um, it's evolved over the years, but right now it's mainly email.
Mm-hmm.
And all the families have multiple emails that we access. Occasionally we'll do phone calls. We're doing Google Meets we're hybrid right now. So that means 2 days in-person learning, 3 days distance learning, and then those groups switch. And so I feel like the Google Classroom setup is a way that we're communicating with the families, even though it's directed at the kids, but they're first graders, so it's really directed at the families. And in the fall, we did in-person conferencing before school started, like social distancing stuff. And then at mid-trimester, we did Google Meets to do conferences. And we found that that was really a positive for the families and for us. It took them less time off of work so that they could conference with us. And it was really pretty a positive experience.
That's awesome. Cool. Um, so how often do you typically communicate with families?
If you include the Google Meet or the Google Classroom, it's every week, and I try to submit like a schedule for the week and then all the assignments. I would say email as needed, but throughout this pandemic, we've been encouraged to reach out to the families more to see what needs they have that the school can fulfill. For example, last week, our counselor went shopping, bought winter clothes for one of my students. So that's not normally something we might have reached out to the family, but we knew that they were struggling financially. So as needed, a couple of times a month, maybe by email.
Okay. Next, do students' caregivers, like parents, guardians, reach out to you to communicate frequently, infrequently?
It depends on the family. Some families, I get quite a few emails a month, maybe 4 or 5 a month, and some families I never hear from.
Yeah.
So today I got a handwritten note about something that had happened last week with the power outage, and mom wanted to make sure that I knew what was going on. So sometimes I'll get notes, but mostly it's emails anymore.
Wow. Okay. How have you been able to include parents into the curriculum as you've moved further into online schooling?
Part of me feels like we haven't included them, but the other part of me says they're completely included. They're a lot more included now because they're in the Google Classroom. They see the assignments. Most of them really have to sit with the kids, or someone has to sit with the kids to help them complete the assignment or at least get started. So I feel like they have a lot more knowledge of what we're actually doing now.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Do you feel as though the district has a basic standard of communication that they want you to have with families?
Basically, it's communicate as much as you can.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, we hired a communications officer, and he has such a wide range of tasks that he does. He's like our social media manager. He puts out emergency communications. He puts out just general emails to the family. There's a Facebook page that he tries to post really positive events that we're doing and stuff. So I feel like he's sort of taken on the role of that. And throughout the pandemic, our superintendent has put out weekly emails to families,
Okay.
trying to keep them updated.
That's awesome. Good. Prior to the pandemic, how often did you have parental volunteers? Because I know right now it's really not happening.
Right. In the beginning of my career, we had quite a few families that would volunteer, mostly moms, honestly, a few dads. As I've gone into my career, I feel like our family's finances have changed, and they're either both parents are working, or no one's working and they just don't have the resources to be able to come to school. They may not have a car, they may not have gas money.
Yeah.
So what was the overall question? Like before the pandemic, how often?
Yeah. So before the pandemic, how often did you have parent volunteers?
I would say early in my career, every week. And last year, no parents at all, other than if we had been able to go on a field trip, we would have had them.
Yeah. That kind of moves into my next question. When you did have parents volunteers, was it like a wide range of parents? It sounds like it was primarily moms.
It mostly was, and younger moms who didn't have other kids, or their kids were older, and so they didn't have daycare kind of issues, because that's quite a burden on a family to expect someone to volunteer every week and give up chunks of time and find daycare.
Yeah. I know I sent you a list of questions, but this is kind of not on there. I think it's not on there. Yeah. So sorry, I had the question and it just went away. Let's move on to the next one and I'll see if I can come back to it. So I know the district has curriculum nights. When they were implemented, was there a high turnout of families?
There was a huge turnout, and what we found is if we offer food, they will come, and if we offer free materials, they'll come. So we were able to feed the families. It might have been pizza or hot dogs, or I think one time we even had lasagna for all the families, and we have about 500 kids, and we would have, I don't know, maybe 80% turnout, and siblings and grandmas, and I mean, it was crazy busy. But through our Title I funds, we were able to offer that as a parent involvement. And so if we offered food, we had huge turnouts. We did math curriculum nights, we did reading nights. It was really pretty powerful to see that many families involved.
Yeah. Do you think it made a huge difference in the students' achievement in your classroom? Or was it more just having them know what's going on?
I think a lot of our families have had difficult school experiences themselves, and to just get them in for a positive reason that forms that bond. And so like that one curriculum night may not increase their achievement, but it increases the family's involvement, and it allows them to have, like I said, to have a positive experience. And so maybe the next time I have a question or I need some involvement, they might be more likely to do that.
That's a really good point. Has there ever, I know schools are kind of in survival mode right now, but have you heard any talks of online curriculum events or?
We haven't, and that's a really good question. We're hybrid right now, maybe moving towards more restrictions after the holidays. And so that is a really good question. I do know in the spring when we did Google Meets, the majority of the families would sit there with us and do the meets with them. So I felt like they knew what was going on. A lot of times we had families answering questions for the kids. So that was sort of interesting, but that's a really good point. I should bring that up.
Yeah, cool. Do you have any specific ideas that might improve parental involvement?
It sort of makes my heart ache when we offer like parent-teacher conferences from 8 to 4. Well, if you're a working family, you're not available 8 to 4. And so I feel like we need to be cognizant of the family's schedules and the family's needs.
Yeah.
And we are becoming more not social workers, but we're trying to meet more of that kind of need for the family, not just the academic need, especially in the pandemic. Like I said, offering clothing, or offering food to families outside of the regular school lunch. And so I think as our families' needs evolve, that school needs to evolve with them.
Yeah. Do you have like a resource director for the district for families right now?
No, we have a homeless liaison,
Okay.
and she serves 250 kids
Wow.
in our district of about 6,000 kids. So that's quite a few. We have a school counselor who has, his role has changed a lot since our first
Oh, I
lockdown
bet.
in
Yeah.
the spring. And so he's become more of a social worker. He goes out to families' houses and he asks them what they need. And like I said, he's buying them clothes out of funds that we have available to us.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Um, so what would make you feel best supported by the district in increasing parental involvement?
Um, Again, being aware of the family's needs and their schedules. Most recently, last year when we had conferences, so we extended our hours into the evening time, which was supposed to be good for families, but then they made us block out an hour for our dinner time at exactly the time that the families would have been able to come. So I feel like sometimes the district doesn't really think outside of the box. So just to be cognizant of the family's needs.
Yeah. Is there a way to communicate that to the district? That
I believe
maybe, oh, go ahead.
I do believe so. I feel like we have a very open communication
That's good.
within the district with our principal and the superintendent and the communication director. I know there was an issue on Facebook last week that I felt like wasn't presenting what we're doing for the kids in the best light. And so I emailed the communication director and he instantly changed what was going on.
Oh,
So
wow.
I feel like we do have an open communication that would be beneficial.
That's good. That's really good. Well, that's the end of my formal questions. I could not remember that other question for the life of me. Do you have anything you want to add?
Um, I don't think so. Good luck in your future career. It's served me well for over 30 years and I still have quite a few years left. It's a good career. It's more necessary now than ever.
Yeah,
So good luck.
definitely.
Keep
Yeah,
up the hard
thank
work.
you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Bye.